From the iconic Corky and Lenny's Restaurant and Delicatessen in Woodmere, Ohio, we are the fabulous Boomer Boys.
Oh, nice crowd. We got a great crowd tonight.
I'm Bob Snyder. This is Bruce Bogart. And welcome to tonight's show. We have got a dandy guest. Anybody that has done any kind of traveling in the state of Ohio or West Virginia, Michigan, Indiana, you're going to really appreciate this guest. And you're going to know who he is. I'm going to hold off a minute before we introduce him, because we do have a couple of things we want to get to. This is kind of an interesting week, Bruce. I'm going to have to say our condolences, first of all, go out to Fred Griffith and his family. Fred has been on the air in Cleveland for over 40 years. We actually were on the Morning Exchange 26 years ago when he was the host, and he couldn't have been a nicer guy. Two schmucks come on the air there, didn't know us from Adam, treated us, three of us, there were three of us, and he treated us, we could have been, top cinematic stars as well as he treated us. Also, we've been lucky enough to have guests like Robin Swoboda, Jan Jones, and of course his producer, Terry Moyer.
Yeah, right.
They've all been on the show, and each one of them has only had nice and wonderful things to say about him. So obviously it wasn't just that one day that he was a nice guy, so we want to send that out. And then we want to send out congratulations to Ivan Schwartz, one of our past guests, from the Cleveland Film Commission. I don't know if you saw today's Plain Dealer or maybe saw it on the news. He has decided to move on to another job, and he picked this time to do it because he did a great job in helping the legislature approve, I believe it's something like $50 to $100 million worth of tax relief.
Excuse me. And Robin Swoboda also used this show as a stepping stone, did she not?
Well, I guess you could say that.
I just said it, Bob. Mr. You're in the right spot right now, I can tell you this.
Right, okay, so that's something for our guests to remember. And, before we do our guests, we want to remind everybody, next week's show, we've got kind of an interesting situation here, where he's not really a personality that is known to people outside of Beechwood. I'm going to say that. I think that's a fair thing to say, although he lives in Solon.
Upper Beechwood.
But he lives in Solon, yeah. And he recently was in the Cleveland Jewish News, actually. He's a collector of celebrity autographs, stories, and much more, Larry Edelman. And he's kind of a real interesting guy. And if you've read the story, you may have seen, he's got autographs, Bruce. I've been at his house. I've seen these things. You ever been there?
No.
No, you don't know. Okay. I've been there.
If he thought I had been there, he would not have asked.
Well, anyway, I've been there. And he's got autographed pictures of, like, Madonna, and it happens to be a nude one. But he also has any kind of celebrity you can imagine over the last 50 years, where he's got pictures in there signed, and he's got stories behind it. Muhammad Ali, he's got Don Rickles, Cindy Crawford. There are too many to mention now, but we're going to talk to him next week. He's got some great stories about
If you get invited back, could you bring me?
He's moving. That's part of the reason.
I guess that's a no.
Yeah, well, anyway, maybe when he moves to his new house. Anyhow, so tonight, let me tell you who we have on tonight. This is good. Can we get a picture of this Tyler Plevin, our technical guy? This is the kind of people this fellow interviewed over the years when he was at Fox 8. Everybody recognize that, of course? Martin Luther King. That's just one of the many famous people that he interviewed. But even though he was a newsman and he covered Kent State shootings and so many other things, the real claim to fame, if you talk to anybody in Northeast Ohio about this fella, is the fact that he was the king of the one-tag trips. Okay? So please give a warm welcome to Neil Zurcher.
All right.
Tyler, you got.
Thank you. This is the most. There we go. To make room for me here?
Yeah, we'll try. If Bruce can fit, you can fit.
Yeah, well, if Bruce can fit.
Did I say that?
Bruce, I think you're in trouble. Hey, thank you very much.
Hey,
it's
look
really
at
nice
you.
to be-
All right,
great
now
to
I've
be here with
got
you.
two of your books here.
Okay,
Now,
what
right
is-
before we get into that, I want
Let me
everybody.
get that out of your
Oh,
way.
I thought it
That's
was
not food.
it's not to eat.
I want everybody to know that you can help people out as to where they can get these books.
Which books are they? Oh, my books.
Yeah.
You can get those anywhere. At Amazon, you can get it at Borders. Borders is out of business, isn't it? Barnes & Noble.
Barnes & Noble, that's the one.
Barnes & Noble. And, of course, Gray & Company here in Cleveland, who is my publisher. He'd be very happy to sell you a book.
Yeah, so I think that's the best way to do it. Get it from
Yeah,
Gray & Company.
Gray & Company would be great.
He was in the house a few weeks ago.
I know he was. I saw it in one of your shows. David, interesting story. When I first met David, I had no idea who Gray...
David Gray, the publisher.
David Gray, the publisher. He called me in 1994, I think it was, and wanted to publish a book. And he told me this later. He had no idea who I was because he never watched commercial television. All he watched was PBS. We agreed to meet at a Max and Irma's place on the west side, and I got out there, and this young boy was standing there in a work shirt and jeans, and I'm standing next to him, and we stood and waited and waited and waited. And finally, a dear little old lady came between me and says, "You're Neil Zurcher, aren't you? And you're on television?" I said, "Yes," and thanked her very much for watching. David turned to me and he said, "You're Neil Zurcher?" And I said, "You're David Gray?" And that's how we met.
And the rest is
the rest is
history.
history.
He's published 9 of my books now.
Yeah, no, we've got the best of one-tank trips, Tales from the Road, Ohio Oddities, and Strange Tales from Ohio.
Well, among others.
Among others,
there were
right.
other books in there too, but yeah, there's some are different. The one-tank trip, of course, is the culmination of 54 years at the station and 35 years of travel. And Strange Tales from Ohio is pretty much the weird stuff that I used to run into on the road. And Ohio Oddities is just the really weird stuff that I always kind of kept filing in the back of my reporter's notebook because I thought it was interesting. And eventually one day I decided we had enough for a trip and for a book. And that's...
Well, we're going to want to talk about some of the things
All
that went
righty.
wrong, for sure. But
All righty.
I know one of the people that got involved, and we have to ask 2 questions. I can't let you out of here without asking, so I'm going to do it right off the top, okay?
Okay.
Number 1, tell us the story about your cars. Because I think, am I right? Everybody here, give me a little.
My cars?
All right. That Nash Rambler that you had, right? I mean,
Well-
this was the, I think I got a picture of it here with
That's the most popular car. It's on the cover of the one-tank trip book.
Right.
That's the 1959 Nash Metropolitan that I still own, in fact.
You still own it. All
I
right,
still own
that's
it.
number 1 question.
Long story of how I got it. I went to Virgil Dominic, who was my boss at the time, and I said, "Virgil, Charles Carolda's on the air and he's driving this van, and I don't want to do that because everybody will think I'm trying to copy Carolda." I said, "I want to go out and get a small car because I'm a rather big guy, and being a small big guy in a little car would be kind of funny. People will remember it." And he said, "No." So,
This is like in what, 1980, right?
This was 1979, actually.
Okay.
And so I went out and I went to a friend of mine, and we borrowed his 1940 Bantam American, which was a little tiny car that actually became the World War II Jeep. It was made in Butler, Pennsylvania. But I didn't own it. We just borrowed it, and we just used it in the opens and closes of the show. And I was driving the car so much that people kept stopping me, and they say, "Where's your car?" And I'd have to tell them the truth. I didn't own it. We didn't have the station. I didn't want to tell them the station was too cheap to buy the thing for me. And so finally one day I just went to Virgil and I said, "Virgil, I've got to have my own car. We've got to have a car that I can use because people are asking for it." And he said no. And so I went out and bought it myself, this 1959 1959 Nash Metropolitan. And we drove that for about the next 8 years. And during that time, I went to Virgil and I said, "Virgil, everybody loves this car when we're out there because the car's become more famous than I. In fact, it got on the cover of Cleveland magazine." He said, "No." I said, "Can I at least get it fixed? I mean, it was breaking down." He said no. That weekend.
Again, he said?
Yeah, he said no again. He was promoted that weekend to president of Fox Broadcasting in Cleveland, and we got a new news director named Phyllis Quayle, who was a lady, first woman I worked for. And I went to Phyllis and I said, "Phyllis, I really need to get this car fixed." And she offered to buy a repair job for the car. So I said, "Great." I went out and got an estimate. The thing was $4,000, which isn't a great deal of money now, but then it was quite a bit. Ordered the work done, and 2 weeks later, Phyllis got fired.
One of her many bad decisions, I
The
guess.
new news director walked in, and the first thing he said, he pulled up, he said, "What's this bill for $4,000? And I told him, and he said, "No." So that's the story. I ended up paying for everything in that car during the years, so it's my car. And when I retired the first time in 2004, the Canton Classic Car Museum called me and they said, we'd really like to put your car on display. And I said, I'd love to have it go there because I didn't have a place to park it. And so it went down there, and it's been in there ever since.
My perception was that you
You heard it here.
Thank you.
you were like a franchise. Why couldn't you just say, you know what, I'm sorry you guys feel that way, and then go on across the street to Channel 3?
Interesting backstory there. Dick Goddard had an agent. Wilma Smith had an agent. Robin Swoboda had an agent. Neil Zurcher didn't have one.
Kind of like Bob Snyder. and Bruce
I'm
Bogart.
not a real good bargainer, I guess is what it boils down to. I had no idea how good I was, if I was good, until after I'd retired. And I knew they were making money off of me, but I had no idea how much until years later when Virgil told me that it was a big franchise for the station.
That's too bad.
Couldn't syndicate it?
I couldn't have syndicated. I didn't own the rights to it. Fox Broadcasting did.
Oh, they
sadly.
did own the
Yeah.
rights. Oh,
Yeah, because when you asked me today if I could bring some the segments over, that's the reason I couldn't, because it's still owned by them. I have the rights to Neil Zurcher's one-tank trips until I die, but
you
that's
do
it.
have that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
That's
You-
why.
you
That's
deserve
why.
it,
That's
yeah.
why I can do the books.
You have. I always thought your wife Bonnie. Let's get a shot. Can we get a shot of
Yes,
your
my
Bonnie?
lovely wife, Bonnie.
We did a lot of traveling with you.
No,
You
she
learn
did.
all. You'll learn about what happens on some of your trips when you talk to her about it in your
That's
book.
true.
Yeah. So
Does she ever say to you, again, really, Tiffin, Ohio, come on?
All the time, but not Tiffin. Oh, Tiffin's a lovely city, by the way. My wife was always glad to travel anytime she could go with me. But unfortunately, the station, in their wisdom again, which I didn't understand, they would let my son Craig, who was at that time around 8, 9 years old, travel with me because they thought it was cute, having my son along and tagging along at some of the things. But I couldn't take my wife or anybody else because our insurance at the station would not allow her to ride in a news cruiser. She could ride in my little car because I owned that.
Oh.
But if we got the news cruiser, she couldn't. So in most cases, she couldn't go
I
on.
thought maybe it was because they thought, you being a handsome guy, that they,
Yeah.
they wanted to didn't want to let everybody know you were married.
It was just
you
kind
know,
of a catch-22 situation.
Yeah.
She did get to go to Alaska when we did take a one-tank
One
trip.
tank?
One take?
A 747.
Oh.
But it was and one Crown Princess, was it? The
cruise.
big cruise ship too. And she got to go on some of the specials that we did over the years, but not very many times.
All right, we're going to talk about some of the things that went wrong, if I can.
okay.
If I can ask about one thing, because when I thought it was a good story when you followed the first person ever to basically fly over Lake Erie
Oh my goodness.
to get to Canada.
Yeah,
Can
that
you-
wasn't a one-tank trip. That was back in my reporting days. Back in 1970, oh dear.
Well, whatever.
Well, it's important because the date has a
Oh,
special
I'll tell you what
historic
it was.
significance.
I'll tell you what it was when it was the time when President Nixon.
It was that day.
Resigned,
It was
right,
that day, in fact.
That was 74.
74, thank you. A fellow by the name of Chuck Zurcher, hard to spell his name, I probably could, but wonderful guy. He was a pilot. He flew hang gliders. That's where I first met him. I saw him jumping off the hill over at Edgewater Park. And
Bruce,
I
have
thought,
you done
I
that?
have no idea what you're talking about. Hand gliders?
hang gliders, a great big, it looks like a big kite.
Of course.
Well, let me tell you how I met him. Originally, I saw him over there at Edgewater, didn't know who he was, and then one day we were driving across by West 11th Street. This was in the wintertime. It was a nice day, though, and we saw people, this was before I-90 was through there, and we saw this kite go jumping off a cliff down over the steel mills. So we turned our news cruiser and pulled over there, and sure enough, here's Chuck Zurcher, and they're running off the edge of this cliff, literally. And he said, "You want to try it?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "It's easy, I'll show you how." And he went and ran off the cliff. And I thought, that doesn't look too hard, I can probably do that. How stupid am I? 3 minutes later, I'm running, and I suddenly realized as my feet left the cliff that this wasn't the smartest thing I've done this week. Because I went out, turned this way, stalled, turned a loop, and came right back into the edge of the cliff, crashing into a pile of broken glass and old mattresses. I crawled back up to the top of the hill, and Chuck said, "You got to get back on and do it again." And I said, "You're crazy. He said, no. He said, I'll show you what you did wrong. He said, you pulled up too much. So I ran, I did it again, did the same thing.
You get hurt.
Crashed into it, dragged through the glass this time, shredded from the waist down. My pants were shredded. I was bleeding all over the place. Finished the interview. My photographer decided I should go to the hospital. They took me to Old St. John's Hospital on Detroit Avenue. I walked into the emergency room. This nurse, like Nurse Ratchet, said, "What are you here for?" Well, from the waist up, at that point, I looked pretty good because I had a winter coat on. She couldn't see the pool of blood by my feet. And I said, "I fell off a kite." And she just sat there and looked at me. And I said, "I really did, a big kite, a great big kite." Well, just that time, somebody walked out, they saw the blood, and they said, "Oh my God." I ended up back in triage. But that's how I met Chuck. And he was going to Canada, be the first person to fly a sailplane from Edgewater Park to Rondo Bay, Ontario. We arranged with the sheriff at that time by the name of Ralph Krieger to ride in the sheriff's boat to escort him across because he was being towed by a speedboat. And we took off and went, and we made it all the way there. He left us in the dust because he had a ski ray or something that was towing him, so we were in the sheriff's boat, we were just poking along. We got ready to come home, and this is like 2 or 3 hours later.
Wait. You didn't tell this part, though.
What's that?
That when he landed in Canada, there
Yeah.
were people waiting for him.
Oh,
But you were
yes.
supposed to film this,
That's
right? And
yes. Yeah, because he
gotta
left
tell
us
us
in the dust because he was already on the shore drinking a beer by the time we got there. And so I told him, I said, "Chuck, you got to go back out and come back in again so we got some footage of you landing here." So he did. He had to go back
Virgil
out.
and Dominic wanted you to show him
Yeah,
landing.
oh, yeah,
there,
well, you know, we didn't care what Virgil didn't. Virgil wasn't there. Yes, he was there at that time.
All right, yeah.
And so anyway, we're starting home, and on the way home, the guys were tired. We had 3 deputy sheriffs on board the boat. They were driving. It was the sheriff's boat. It was all marked up with a red light and a siren and everything. And I had a photographer with me by the name of Ralph Tarsitano, who lives over here in Mayfield. Wonderful guy, wonderful photographer, had been in the Coast Guard, and he'd been talking all the way across the lake how much he missed the Coast Guard. And they said, "You want to steer the boat for a while?" And he said, "Sure." So he's steering the boat, the deputies went to sleep. Well, Ralph couldn't see over the front part of the boat, and the compass was there, so he picked the compass up and he put it at the floor by his feet over top of the motor. And he kept steering away, and we kept going and going and going. Well, an hour and a half went by when we should have been well back in Cleveland. We're still in the middle of the lake. And the deputies woke up, and they're going, "What happened? The compass is going like this because it's sitting over top of the motor. It's shot." They get on the radio. The radio's not working now. I don't know if Tarsitano had anything to do with that. This is a long story. I'll try to make it as short as I can. Anyway, we pulled up to a group of fishermen to find out where the heck we were. And they said they saw Portuguese. Turned out they were from Canada, and they pointed us one way, so we kept going. We thought we were heading towards Cleveland. We ended up back in Rondo Bay.
So you did a circle.
We'd done a circle out in the lake and come back, and there's a guy walking on the beach, and he's got a raincoat on. It was a hot summer's day, and this deputy got on the loudspeaker. He hit his siren, blew his siren, got the blue lights and red lights going, and he says, "Ahoy, where are we?" And the guy went, "Eh?" And he says, "Where are we?" And he said, "You're in Rondo Bay, Ontario." And so we had to turn around and start back again.
And you're wondering why you didn't get a car?
That's why.
If I was Virgil Dominic, you weren't getting a car either.
Well, you have to read the book to hear the rest of the story because it involves a whole lot more. A ship sinking, boat sinking, and I got home
This
and
reminds me of a trip with Bruce Bogart driving home from Columbus.
Doesn't remind me of that.
Okay.
but the bottom line to this whole thing was that I had to hurry back to Cleveland to get this thing in, and we got there and it turned out it wasn't covered because Nixon resigned that afternoon, which we didn't know until we got back.
Never even got on.
So then our story never got on.
I know Bruce has a story that you wanted to ask.
Well, I wanted to mention that you had something to lead into that. I think something about going on at Ohio State you wanted to talk
Oh,
about?
yeah, you were telling, wasn't there something about Sloopy and Ohio State?
Well, this is going to take a few minutes if you want another long story. It's always bothered me about our official state rock song, "Hang On Sloopy." I mean, we love
Careful,
this song.
Careful. We
Careful.
bleed,
You are-
bleed
you are
Scotland.
among Buckeyes.
Right.
I-
Scotland's
the
great.
Scarlet
Just be
and
careful.
Gray.
God knows I'm one too. I mean, I wrote my first story about it way back when I was Columbus bureau chief for Fox 8. And I was walking through the State House Rotunda one night, the then Lieutenant Governor, by a guy by the name of John Brown. And I said, Governor, what is this Snoopy that they keep singing about over there at Ohio State?
O-H-I?
And he says, it's Sloopy, not Snoopy.
Right.
And I said, oh, you're not talking about the Charles Schultz dog? And he said, no. He said, they're talking about some barmaid or a hooker or something down in Steubenville, Ohio. And I said, what? And he said, go look it up. He says, go up and look at the ordinance. So I went upstairs and I got it. And I want to read you the actual ordinance that created our state official rock song.
Do we need to stand for this?
No, you don't need to stand, but you may have to bear with me for a minute here because
Bruce.
I'm just never sure what I'm going to do on these things. But you know, when they finally put this thing on,
While you're doing that, let's like riff a little. Hang on, Sloopy,
Sloopy, hang on.
Oh, wait!
H-I-O. Thank
You
you.
can't do that forever, you know.
all right. Well, we'll read you the actual proclamation, I hope. All right. Whereas the members of the Ohio 116 General Assembly of Ohio wish to recognize the rock song Hang On Sloopy as the official rock song of the state of Ohio, and whereas if fans of jazz, country and western, classical, Hawaiian, and polka music think those styles should also be recognized by the state, then they, by golly, they can push their own resolution just like we're doing. Whereas Hang On Sloopy is not of particular relevance to members of the baby boom generation who were once dismissed as a bunch of long-haired crazy kids, but who now are old enough and vote enough in sufficient numbers to be taken quite seriously, and whereas adoption of this resolution will not take too long, cost the state anything, or affect the quality of life in the state to any appreciable degree, and if we, the legislature, will just go ahead and pass the darn thing, we can get on with more important stuff.
All right, go Bucks.
All right.
Now,
So what
but-
bothers you about that?
Well, what bothers me is this. If you ever listen to the words, I mean, you know the song. I mean,
Yeah.
don't sing it. Just listen to it, man. That's the point that has always gotten me a little bit about this, because it's, you know, it's hang on, Sloopy, hang on. You know, hang on. No, let's see
Sloopy, hang
if I
on.
Sloopy lived in a very bad part of town.
town. Yes, thank you. That was it. And then
Now, we're going to have to pay broadcasting rights if we do this?
Oh, well, that's right. We'd be better not do that.
You could tell us why you don't like
Yes.
it, though. Dad,
You can
Well, the reason I don't like it is it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, for years and all, why are we singing about some barmaid in Steubenville, Ohio?
Because
And
the
they
band
can't
was
fish.
from Ohio, I think.
Ben was
That
from
was why.
Cincinnati, McCoy's.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well,
But wait,
Bruce,
I
you
wanna-
got a picture there. What is
Before
it?
we get to this, I want to segue into another Ohio State thing because
Okay.
I was brought up in a Jewish home and we didn't do one-tank trips.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't what we did.
Okay.
We
Wait a
just-
minute, I did.
Well, you were in the rich side of South Euclid. You know, I
Okay.
was down in the.
So we could afford one tank.
Here's the thing. I'm going on a one-tank trip.
Okay.
Friday, and I'm going to Newcomerstown. Have you ever been there?
I've been to Newcomerstown.
Okay. Well, I like it.
I think so. I
What'd you
mean,
do there?
I went to Gnadenhutten, which was nearby.
That's a city.
Well, it's a village, but yeah.
Well, what were you doing? Why'd you go there?
I went down there to actually visit this place where this Indian massacre took place. The Trumpet in the Land, the big outdoor drama that's held in New Philadelphia every summer, actually depicts what happened in Gnadenhutten or Gnadenhutten, and whichever way you want to pronounce it. And Newcomerstown is just down the road. They do a lot of looking for Bigfoot down there, and I think there's a little museum in the town for a World War II destroyer. So if that's your cup of tea,
No,
why?
it's actually not my cup of tea.
Oh, okay.
Let me ask you, did anybody ever cover the Armor Parade in Beechwood?
Armor Parade? No, I don't think so.
Bruce? you
Well,
want-
you know what, Bob? It's a sensitive subject. It's a parade that goes
Okay.
on every year in July to
Okay.
commemorate the righting of a wrong, and we're not ready for prime time yet.
Okay,
So I don't want
all
to
right,
talk about
all
it.
right.
But I want you to know I'm going down there for a reason.
Okay.
And I'm excited about it.
What are you going to do?
I'm going down there because I don't know if you had any heroes growing up. Mine was my father.
Yes.
And my next was Woody Hayes.
Ah,
And they
that's-
have a historical
yes,
society down
absolutely.
there that dedicates a fort to Woody Hayes.
That's right.
And I'm going down there. because that's what I want to do. I want to do it while I still can, and I'm excited about it. And I'll probably stop and eat on the way. I don't think I can go 2 hours without eating.
No.
But and I won't eat at Corky's. I'm not packing from Corky's, but I'm excited about it. And that's when it's a good way for you to be here.
Thank you.
And so Neil, when you're driving around and out and about, I've got to
Uh-huh.
figure people are always saying to you, I want to go somewhere in Ohio. Where should I go? That's got to drive you crazy. How can you?
well,
I mean, you get 2, 3, 4 books here with all these places. How
As
do you
I've
pick
tried
one?
to explain to people down through the years, I said, what you like and what I like are two different things. And usually when somebody says, what's your favorite trip, I'll say, what is your favorite trip? What do you like to do? And it would turn out maybe it was something that I did over the years.
What about Bonnie? What was her favorite trip with you?
Bonnie, I think we'd both agree it was the jet boat ride up at Niagara Falls, Ontario, at Niagara-on-the-Lake. Somebody was mentioning earlier to me tonight that they're going to Niagara-on-the-Lake. Have you ever done that before?
No.
Yeah, wonderful. It's a open jet boat ride. You go up the Niagara River into the giant whirlpool, and then turn around and come back through the Devil's Hole Rapids.
Oh.
And so the waves get to 20 to 30 feet high, and you go directly through them in an open boat. And you get wet. I mean, you take extra clothes, take 2 pairs of extra clothes along with you. You'll need both of them, but
Now,
it's really
when
wonderful.
you say that, though, I want to say one of the things that Neil doesn't do, and I respect you for it, he doesn't talk a lot about like Cedar Point, Kings Island, these big, huge amusement parks. That's not the idea. When you look at his books and watch his broadcasts, he's talking about the places that maybe you didn't hear about, like Woody Hayes' birthplace, that kind of thing. Right?
Yeah, actually, that was the way it started off. We did do Cedar Point and those kind of things, but it suddenly occurred to me early on in the series that most of these great big places like it spend tons of money advertising everything. You already know about it. I mean, it's like taking, I'm not sure what analogy I want to make, but it really just doesn't make sense. And that's why I wanted to find the things that people didn't know about, the little amusement parks that maybe don't get all the publicity every year. Like Waldameer Amusement Park up here by Erie, Pennsylvania. A lot of people don't even know it exists, but yet it's a beautiful little private mom and pop type park. It's still there. A couple of years ago, they had one of the world's 10 best roller coasters built there.
What's it called again?
It's called Waldameer Amusement Park. It's right at the entrance to Presque Isle State Park. But it's things like that I wanted to tell people about rather than just repeating what happens at Cedar Point. And one other thing I might add, the 34 years that I did the show, nobody in the station ever told me where to go. I wasn't driven by any advertiser. When I went, it was just what I personally liked, what you saw.
Bob tells me where to go every week.
And that I give credit to Virgil Dominic because he fought off the advertising department, tried over and over to plant things that why don't you go do a story on this because this person just bought a lot of advertising and I just wouldn't do it.
Now, you have been to the center of the world.
I have been to the center of the world. Center of
Let's
the
see,
world
show the
is
picture.
over by
Hold this up.
Warren, Ohio. And I think if you've
You get
ever
that?
been on Route 5 over there, you've been through the center of the world. This pioneer many years ago stopped there, built a general store, and they asked him what he was going to call it. And he said, this is the center of the world. So they called it that. When it failed a few weeks later, he moved over to Cortland, Ohio, and he built a new one called the end of the world. That didn't make it either. The problem the state has over there, people keep stealing the signs. They stop to get their picture
Oh, the
taken.
sign, sure.
Yeah, they've stolen that sign several times.
Let me ask you this. Did you ever run out of gas on your one-day trips?
On the actual trips, no. Personally, my wife and I did.
You did, she said.
She said,
She says you did.
She says I did. Well, I was driving.
Well, if she says that she's
Yeah.
right and you're wrong, that's the rule.
Well, that's true. I mean,
How long have you guys been married?
Too long. No.
Whoa!
Forgive me.
Oh, no.
Can we back the tape up?
Yeah.
No, how long?
We've been married, what, 30-some years?
You should write it down. You really should.
Actually, we both forget, so it's been
As
a
long
long
as you
time.
both forget, it's okay.
We've been a long time married.
God forbid I ever forget.
Yeah.
But anyway. 31.
31.
Yeah.
In a row? I was in a row.
In a row. Okay. All right. Neil, there's so many stories. I mean, I can't believe we don't have the time.
We
but
could keep going all night.
we could. These are great stories. We're going to ask you to help us do something else.
I would love
when
to.
John Gorman was here, last week. We didn't
John.
get a chance. You know John Gorman.
I know John.
And he
Actually,
now,
we're neighbors.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Bay Village. By the
Yeah.
way, would this be considered a one-tank trip from Bay Village to Corky and Lenny's?
It felt like it tonight. If we had time, I'd tell you my first trip to Corky and Lenny's.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead. Tyler,
first-
you got to hang in there. Go ahead.
1967, I started at Channel 8 full-time. And we had a fellow by the name of Sanford Sobel, who was an old police reporter that was in charge of just teaching the reporters something new. And he took me out one day and he said, "We're going to lunch." And I went, "Okay." And he said, "Corky and Lenny's." So it was Cedar Center, I think it was at the time.
That's right.
And we went out there and we sat down with this tall, rather gruff-looking man. And he said, "Don't say anything to him. Don't ask any questions. Just listen to me talk." I did. It turned out the man he was having lunch with was Chandra Burns. And that was my introduction to Chandra. Actually, I interviewed Chandra several times after that.
Before he was bombed, right?
Before I was there the morning he was bombed, in fact.
Hi.
But that was not very pleasant. I don't
That was
think
one of our other guests, was the author of the book.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Rick Perella.
Rick Perella from
March
Lyndhurst.
28th, 1975, I think it was, back of the Jack and Jill bar there in Detroit and West 25th Street. And it was,
Oh, you hung out at all the good places.
no, I wasn't in the bar.
Oh.
I got called at 3 in the morning, and they said,
Everything happened.
meet a photographer because Chandra Burns had just been blown up.
And Nixon resigned on the day that something else happened.
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
and I really want, I'm sorry we don't have the time, because I understand the Kent State experience had to be something special for you. I mean, not it's something you want to brag about.
No.
Special isn't the right word, sorry, Bruce. But it is something that's got to be unforgettable.
I spent the afternoon in the hospital. I wasn't there. I didn't get over there till evening. It was pretty much over by the time I got there. I had been sent to Illyria to a big garden nursery fire, and I got exposed to arsenic that got burned over there that day. And they sent me to the hospital with some firemen to get checked out. And while I was in the emergency room, I heard what had happened at Kent State. So I called the station, and they said, "As soon as you're out of there, head for Kent State," and that's why I wasn't there.
That's a one-tank trip from
Yeah,
Elyria
it was.
to
It was a
yeah.
double one-tank trip.
All right, Bruce, you want to hand them the things? We are going to give away a T-shirt.
My name's not in there.
Well, we don't have, you'll have to get us the next time.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right,
Okay.
let's pick one, huh?
Pick
This
one.
is the
I guess
radio
it was-
station. that
Oh,
John-
my Lord.
Gail?
Gail?
Seriously?
Seriously?
She said her name. No, when you signed the list, then we put all the names in there. So come on up, Gail. You got to come up.
See?
Give a little hand to Gail here. Gail Schwartz.
There you go.
I don't know how this will fit you, but when you see John Gorman, be sure to be wearing that.
I
This is,
will.
and
Thank you.
that's it. You're welcome. This is
Big.
all right. Thank you, Gail. Gail's one of our posse here. Comes quite often, so it's kind of fitting that she won. Thank you for drawing the name.
Thank you. It's
All
been
right.
fun.
So, did we learn something tonight? Did we have a good time with Neil? What do you think, everybody? Yeah. Larry Friedman's here. This guy, I have lunch with him once a week. He always has questions. Larry, I'm not going to let him go. If you have a question, I want you to ask it.
Well, I thought maybe you would have some suggestions for people that can't drive more than one tank.
Stay home.
Actually, Larry, you and I are in the same boat. I can't drive anymore either. That's why I can't take one-tank trips like I did.
Did the spike in gasoline kill the one?
That sure, it's one of the reasons that they started in the first place, because gasoline prices had gone up in 1979.
Right.
And Virgil Dominic again had thought up this idea of, for a week we'd have the series that, where can people go on just a tank of gas? And it was proved that we hit a nerve. Everybody was looking for a place to go. And it lasted for 35 years.
Wow.
So, I would suggest places you can go when somebody else drives. Just pick places you enjoy and they'll enjoy too. Make sure your driver enjoys it. I'm sorry?
You majored in journalism?
I didn't major in much of anything. I majored. I
Which
made.
college did you go to?
I didn't go to college. I'm one of the old breed. I went to the Marine Corps. I was back in the days when you got out of high school and you pretty much had a choice which service do you want to go into.
Well, once a Marine, always a Marine.
It
That's
was-
right.
it was-
Well,
it was-
whatever it was, you learned your lessons because
I
you
did.
did a great job.
Can I have one more question?
Okay.
You guys are in a car on a one-tank trip, right? Who controlled the radio?
Who controls the radio?
Yeah, I want to know. It's important to me.
We don't usually listen to the radio. Actually, what we listen to now is Alexa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
is
then-
that
yeah, we
music?
carry it in our car, on our phones. We can just get Alexa, Alexa
Just
play
ask for
this.
whatever you want.
And whatever we like. We have the music we like.
Well, that's great.
Bruce,
Now-
I'm glad you asked that question.
Well, I wanted an answer. I got the answer.
What big bands did you like?
I liked Glenn Miller Band.
Oh, I did too. Vaughn Monroe. Does anybody remember Vaughn?
Yeah, that great low voice.
He was one of my favorites. And Ziggy Talent.
No, that's
Ziggy Talent was
before
a-
my time.
Ziggy
Bob would know,
Talent was
he's
a
older.
sax player with Vaughn Monroe Orchestra.
Oh, okay.
And he had one hit record called The Mad Maharaja of Mogador.
Is that a one-trip chick? What take?
All right, well, listen.
All right, we got to wrap it up. I'm getting the signal here. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I want to remind everybody, thank you, Good job. That we have next week our soon-to-be famous collector, Larry Edelman, who's going to be talking about all these different collections he has and the stories behind them. And I know everybody's going to like that. We want you hopefully to tune in for that. And please, as those of you watching on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the share button, and keep watching as we roll on here. We're getting near our first full year with our Fabulous Boomer Boys show here on YouTube.
Anniversary
So thank you very much. You've kept us on the air. We appreciate it.
Okay.
And hey, once again, Neil Zurcher, thank you.
Thank you so much.